This is 2021's Great White. Warning, spoilers ahead. We open up to the water crashing onto the coast, and we find a peaceful beach a little further down the line. On a boat, relaxing music plays over the radio, and we see that the passengers are in the middle of having a great time. Tracy is swimming with Luke, and he tells her that he really likes this place. Before heading back to the boat, Luke takes a picture with his phone, but they're interrupted when Tracy starts seeing a shark fin swimming around them. Luke calms her down as best as he can, and they start swimming back to the boat. The shark is close behind them, but when Tracy gets to the boat, she looks behind her to find that Luke is getting eaten. Tracy starts climbing into the boat, but the rope that's holding the mast snaps and smacks her back into the water. She floats there unconscious. Across the water, Kaz and Charlie land their seaplane on a dock, and they make their way up to a nice house on the water. Apparently, someone didn't do well during the flight, and there's some cleanup that needs to happen. Kaz sits at the table and starts working on finances, but Charlie tries to get her to relax and take it easy. Naturally, she stops all work and gets it on with Charlie, because taking it easy is code for bedroom gymnastics. Of course, when they're done and wake up in the morning, Kaz starts talking business already, and I feel like this is the only time that Charlie actually listens to that kind of talk. While they lay in bed, Kaz rubs a scar on Charlie's leg, and she's clearly upset about whatever happened. Charlie changes the subject and asks her if she thinks they should get married, but their conversation is cut short when the phone starts ringing. It's a potential customer, and after barely any sales talk, he books a midday charter for the next day. When tomorrow comes, Kaz and Charlie get the plane ready, and a fancy car pulls up. Joji and Michelle make their way out of the plane, and they notice Benny helping with the plane. Michelle mentions that she's excited to go snorkeling, but Joji just wants to sit on the beach with a beer in his hand. Joji notices Benny giving Michelle a little too much attention, and he asks if he's coming. Charlie points out that Benny is their cook, and they go about their flight. This is a beautiful location. Just watching it on a screen is mesmerizing, and I couldn't imagine what it would feel like to actually fly over it. As they fly, Charlie mentions that they might see a whale if they look close enough, but Benny mentions that they're more likely to see a great white shark. Naturally, this is a good way to lead into Charlie explaining where his scar is from. And apparently, he was a marine biologist that studied shark pack hunting. One day when he went out on his own, a shark came up and took a nice chunk out of him. Of course, this conversation doesn't put Joji or Michelle at ease, but they continue to their private destination. Once there, Kaz gives a little backstory on the beach, and she mentions that there was a crew that was stranded here for over 15 days. Michelle mentions that one survivor was her grandfather, and she's there to scatter his ashes. Of course, it's a national park, so that's completely illegal, but no one's going to stop her. Can they really tell her no after finding out who it is? As Kaz and Charlie walk the beach, Kaz brings up the conversation of them getting married, but Charlie interrupts her when he spots some dolphins. Then Kaz decides to drop the pregnancy bomb on Charlie, and he's a little speechless. Kaz thinks that after they get back from this trip, they should get married, and Charlie couldn't be happier. Well, we know someone's not going to make it back alive now. Look at that, right on cue. Benny comes to get Kaz and Charlie, and they find Joji consoling Michelle on the beach. Joji points to a spot on the beach, and when they investigate it, they find a rotten corpse with his legs eaten off. When Charlie sees this, he gets a flashback to the attack he survived, and they know exactly what they're dealing with. Kaz says that they have to cut the trip short, and Charlie seems to agree with her. Kaz finds the corpse's phone, and it turns out to be Luke. She uses his fingerprint to unlock the phone, and Benny covers him with his shirt. Kaz goes through the pictures on the phone, and they can confirm it was a shark attack. Benny mentions that Luke's boat should still be around the area, and he thinks that Tracy could still be alive and needing help. Joji's a little scaredy cat, but he's talking sense. He mentions that they don't even know where to start looking, but they also have a plane. A bird's eye view does make something like search and rescue way more manageable. With 45 minutes fuel reserve, Charlie takes them up, and he has everyone keep an eye out for the boat. Eventually, Michelle spots a boat that's capsized, and Charlie lands the plane nearby. Benny thinks that they should jump in to take a look, but Kaz doesn't think that they can afford to lose Charlie since he's the pilot. Benny decides that he'll go instead, and he jumps in without hesitation. When Benny goes under, he searches the entire boat, and he loses it when he finds Tracy's half-eaten body. He swims back to the surface, and he goes as quickly as he can to the plane. Kaz thinks that it's time to go, and everyone hops in their seat. It can't be that easy. And look at that! This shark straight up attacks the entire plane. Their best chance is the inflatable life raft, and I'm not really sure that's going to do anything. That shark just took out an entire seaplane. That thing could pop the raft in a matter of seconds. Joji believes the same thing, and he almost refuses to leave the plane. Luckily for him, he comes to his senses and jumps in the raft at the last second. All of them watch as the plane sinks to the bottom, and now they're stranded in the middle of the water. Kaz bandages Benny as best as she can, and Joji asks if Charlie was able to get a mayday out before he left the plane. Charlie isn't sure, and now they realize just how screwed they really are. According to Charlie, rescue won't send a plane until first light tomorrow, and Charlie thinks that they should start paddling with the current to get to a coast by tomorrow afternoon if everything goes well. Once again, Joji has an issue with Charlie's authority, but he gets put in his place pretty quickly. Michelle asks the right questions. She's more concerned about the shark, if anything. I think floating around in a raft for a day or two is much more manageable than dealing with a psycho shark that took out a boat and plane. Kaz and Charlie start paddling with the current, and he stops every now and then to make sure they're on course. They don't see that the shark is literally following them. After a while, Joji tosses an empty water bottle into the ocean, and Charlie fishes it out. Then he asks Benny what he saw when the fish attacked, and he tells him that the shark is about 5 meters. Charlie asks how his arm feels, and Benny tells him he's good enough to chip in and paddle. Meanwhile, Kaz tends to the bump on Michelle's head, and she tells Kaz that Joji hates the water since he almost drowned when he was a kid. I think that after this experience, Joji is officially going to be done with the water. Can't really blame him either. Michelle and Kaz take this time to talk about how Kaz met Charlie, and it turns out that she was the triage nurse at the hospital when he was brought in for his shark attack. While they're talking, Michelle figures out that Kaz is pregnant, and she couldn't be happier for her. The crew paddles on throughout the day, and the shark tails them the entire time. Suddenly, Joji starts noticing a fin breaking the surface of the water and starts freaking out. Finally, he listens enough to hear that it's just a dolphin. Michelle tells him that he freaked her out, and he composes himself for a moment. As the day rolls on, nighttime comes, and the group keeps paddling. They realize that they only have 1 bottle of water left, and Joji decides to take this time to tell the group his analysis of the situation. He's not very happy, and he doesn't think that they'll make it. I'm with him. At least he finally gets Charlie to admit that the shark is still there and close. That should be enough motivation to keep them going at this point. A storm rages nearby as the group keeps paddling, and Michelle seems to be getting really tired. Joji takes a moment to wrap her hands once he notices the blisters forming on them, and she thanks him before continuing. Eventually, Michelle falls asleep and drops her oar into the water, and no one seems to notice for quite some time. Suddenly, thunder rumbles, and Michelle realizes what's happened. Everyone searches for the paddle, and Benny spots it quite a ways from the boat. Charlie starts to have flashbacks to his shark attack, and he doesn't realize that Kaz is jumping into the water. She promises that she'll be okay, and she calmly swims out to it. She makes it to the paddle, but on her way back, the shark makes its presence known behind her. She picks up the speed, and she makes it to the boat with only seconds to spare. Well, now they have their visual confirmation that they're not alone out here. Now the shark is just going to tease them continuously. As the night goes on, Charlie gives the girls suits to put on so they can keep warm, and Benny decides to offer Michelle a hand with hers. Joji doesn't take kindly to this, and he hits Benny in the arm before pushing him in the water. Sure enough, the shark gets him just as he gets back to the boat. Man, throw Joji overboard. This petulant child should be grateful that they even included him on their raft in the first place after all the boo-hooing that he's been doing. Haha, rhyme. Soon the group starts to float into the storm, and Kaz starts blaming herself for not pulling Benny up faster. Charlie assures her that none of it was her fault, and they grab some water bottles to start catching some rainwater. When the rain stops, everyone is allowed 1 mouthful of water, and Charlie starts going through their supplies. Eventually, he finds a knife, and he starts thinking up a plan to get close enough to the shark so that they can get its brain. Kaz does not like the idea, but no one really has a better one. They go back to paddling, and they keep an eye out for the shark who's following nearby. Eventually, Michelle switches spots with Joji, and this is when the shark decides to strike. That thing straight up tips everyone out of the boat like this is an all-you-can-eat buffet. It was a nice little howdy-ho. Then, as if karma's collecting what's due, it snatches Joji right out of the water like a bear trap. But he's alive. Eventually, Joji floats up to the surface and he begs for them to reach in. Charlie starts paddling towards him, but the shark drags him off into the distance. In the morning, Michelle decides that this is a good time to scatter her grandfather's ashes, and after that, Kaz tries to motivate her to keep going. Michelle draws inspiration from the memory of her grandfather surviving and they continue to float. Charlie points out that the raft has a hole in it thanks to the shark, but it's a slow leak. He thinks that they can still make it if they just keep paddling. Kaz and Michelle start paddling with their hands, and Charlie tells them that the current is doing a lot of the work for them. Just when he finally gets them to take a break, the shark starts coming right at them. Charlie's created a spear with one of the paddles and a knife, but he discovers a terrifying truth. There are 2 of them! Kaz gets knocked into the water, but she's pulled in before the sharks can get her. After they rest for a moment, Michelle wakes up to find that the raft is filling up with water, but she also spots the shore is not too far away. The whole group wakes up and starts paddling their way to the shore, but the sharks aren't done yet. After assessing their situation, they realize that the raft isn't going to make it to the shore, and Charlie gets ready to face the sharks on his own. Kaz tells him that that isn't an option, and they're going to figure this out together. He gives her a flare gun, and he tells her to aim for the mouth or the eye so he can go for the brain with the spear. Then he tells poor Michelle to just make a break for land. I would not want to be left alone here without a weapon. If one of those sharks decides to swim a little bit around Kaz and Charlie, it's bye-bye Michelle. They all hop in the water, and Charlie lures one of them to him. Kaz fires a shot right in the shark's mouth, and Charlie jumps on his opportunity to take it down. Eventually, he does just that, and they catch their breath for a moment. Meanwhile, Michelle makes it to a chunk of solid ground, and the shark turns around to go after Charlie and Kaz. Charlie reloads the flare gun, and he spots the other shark making its way to them. He holds Kaz close to him as he tells her that he loves her, and he pushes away from her to face the shark. He fires a shot that misses, and the shark takes him. Kaz screams in horror, but she eventually makes it to the ground that Michelle's sitting on. Once Michelle realizes that Charlie isn't coming up, she holds Kaz while she sobs. The shark knocks both of the women into the water, and Kaz tells Michelle to make a break for the shore. While Michelle swims, Kaz dives underwater to lure the shark, and she leads it through an underwater shipwreck. It manages to break into the ship, but falling debris traps it. At the same time, Kaz gets her oxygen tank stuck on some debris as well, and she starts to pass out while the shark struggles. Suddenly, Michelle appears, and she grabs her to breathe air into her lungs. Now that Kaz comes back, she bangs on the rest of the wreck to try and knock a sharp piece loose that'll help impale the shark. Eventually, it does just that, and the ladies swim for the surface. Finally, they make it to the beach, and they take a moment to catch their breath. Granted, they're stranded on a beach now, but I'd take that over an inflatable raft surrounded by sharks any day. It would be their luck that an alligator pops out of the trees next. That doesn't happen though. And they sit on the beach looking out over the horizon. Then, the credits roll. It's been a hot minute since I've seen a somewhat decent shark movie. This one was well thought out, but it's the tried and true shark survival horror movie. Give it a shot. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.